Have you ever thought to yourself, but I just can't draw? Well, in this video, I'd like to show 3 tips to help you visualize the steps to do a simple technical sketch. Those 3 steps are form, divide, and beautify. So first off, form has to do with the overall 3 dimensions. Okay, so immediately when I look at any product, and in this case, in this video, we're going to be taking a look at this small little bracket here, and I've got a 3D printed model just to help us visualize what it is we're trying to see. So anytime you look at an object, you want to identify, okay, first step, think about the form. In form, I want to look at my overall proportions in length, width, and height. So in this case, what I'm looking for is, okay, my overall length. How is that in relation to the width? Okay, so if I take the width and I'm just visually doing a simple inspection, well, my width appears to be close to 2/3 that of the length. So I try to use simple math, divide things in thirds, fourths. But in this case, if I had to guess, I would say that width looks like 2/3 the length. So I want to keep that in mind as I sketch out my form. Remember, form just deals with length, width, and height. The other observation that we see is, okay, the height is relatively pretty close to the same as my width. So I have kind of 2 equal portions here, and then both of those are in relation to about 2/3 the overall length. So here, first step I'm going to do, I'm going to sketch out my form, overall length, width, and height, and then I'm going to move on to divide. So the next thing, after you get your form down, the next thing is the dividing part. So here is where we identify all of the features that we want to showcase in the actual sketch. Okay, so obviously here's where we're going to start dividing out the sections of what is actually there, what is not there. So far, all we got is overall length, width, and height. How do we, the second step, divide that out? So the first thing I can do, okay, I want to look at just this shelf here on the front. So if I look at this shelf, where is it located? So I'm looking at my height, and from my height I can see, okay, that top of the shelf, guess what? That appears to be about at that 1/3, 2/3 mark. So I can look at that and I can realize, okay, that's where that has to be. I should make that consistent. And if I look, this is where it's going to help. I can cut that off. I see it's the same as my cutoff in the back. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to draw a straight line across the whole way. That gives me that identification. And then from there, we can divide out the bottom. Okay, so we take that 1/3, looks like we can split it in half. So we're just going to divide that out. We're dividing our cube down so that we can locate where these features are in our sketch. Okay, so once we get the form, we're just dividing that form down. That's all we're doing. So the other thing that we want to divide out is, where is this vertical piece? Here. Okay, so we know from that same thing, we can kind of look at, from our overall width, how do we find the thickness of this back section? Well, we can just look at, you want to think in proportions. That's pretty close. Now, it might not be exact, but it's pretty close to our, 1/3 and 2/3 section. So we can draw a vertical line at that location to get that representation that is where that is going to be located in our sketch. So we're just dividing that out again. So by now you can see that, okay, here's where our shelf is, and the next thing we need to identify is the location of these two holes. So in this isometric view, you see that the holes, where are they located? Well, they're a certain distance from the front, and they're a certain distance from the side. So I can basically offset. I can create a line on that surface at those locations to find my center of the hole. Once I find my center, I can draw my ellipse around that. So you should see that here. So this next feature that we want to look at is this top half ring feature. Okay, think of it as basically it's half a circle. So that half a circle, where is the circle located? The circle is located in the center of the length. Okay, so I can follow along the top. I can find the center point. Where's the halfway mark? And that's where I'm going to build. Okay, evenly out from that, that's where I want to draw my circle. I can draw my straight lines, my verticals up and down, so I know how I'm getting the exact width, I'm getting the exact depth, and then trace your arcs in from there. So that, because you know that the arcs of a circle are gonna touch on the midpoints of the square. So once you have that, there you go. You can fill that in. So this last little bit, we're just identifying this radius on the front. So we know basically, hey, it's got to touch the side, it's got to touch the front. It's about even because it's got to touch, where does that start? Halfway. We've already kind of identified where the radius is when we located our hole. So we can use that to basically, okay, it's got to touch those 2 points and do that on both ends. Bring it down. So by this point in your sketch, you should have all of the locations of all of the features located in your sketch. And so that is pretty much getting you all the way through that second step, divide. So the first step, we had the form, what is the overall length, width, and height. And the step 2, dividing out your features, dividing out for location, dividing out for what those features are. And so once you have that step, you've completed step 2. So once you have all of those things, the last step is to take a darker pen or darker pencil, or and you want to basically outline the actual object. What is the actual object that's left? And so all of the object lines, try to make those a little bit darker. And so basically it'll stand out from all your other lines that you already had in there. Okay, so all your construction lines, your location lines. So all you're left with is just a little bit of the darker and the dark object lines that you would actually see. Step 3 deals with beautify. So we had form, divide, beautify. In this step, basically we want to just differentiate which sides are pointing which direction. So I usually tend to create maybe a light coming from the top, which would make the top surfaces, any surface that is facing the top would have a lighter surface. So if I'm going to differentiate that, I'm going to say, okay, those have my lightest gradation, okay? And then where's my darkest gradation? Well, I kind of put the, maybe the front side that's furthest away from the light. I would put that under, okay? So then you have that gradation. And then on the third side, third dimension, I would just kind of somewhere in between your darkest and your lightest. So that gives everybody kind of a little bit of a knowledge about what it is they're looking at, which faces are facing which direction. And then lastly in the beautify, if you want to add some pizzazz, if you want to add a little bit of color, go ahead, add some color using the same 3, lightest, darkest, and the in-between colors. That's a good way to reference things. Also, is there any shadows? You could add a shadow, on the bottom. Sometimes if you add the shadow, is there a background that you could add? And so that's an easy way to get that as well. Add that in, just going straight across there. that pretty well covers doing a sketch. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and you know, I'll try to have more tips coming for this class as well. So if you like that sort of thing, hit subscribe, hit like, and we'll see how these keep coming.